attended one of these.
Well, welcome. This is the Austin area chapter, and tonight is the 28th of March, 2023. We're delighted to have as our guest tonight, Sharon Burch and Yeshe Chodron. And we will start with having Sharon.
One's the EU. One's the EU.
We'll start by having Sharon introduce us to the national regional conferences.
Okay, great. And I do want to tell the ones that have just come that if you want CE credit for attending tonight, put your name and your email address in the chat. That's some of you know that, but there's some new people I think here that might not know it. So yes, the American Holistic Nurses Association, the national group, has put together regional self-care conferences that they give throughout the country, and they're hosted by the chapters in each region. And so I'd love to let you know that in the South Texas area, there's going to be a regional self-care conference in January. I don't have the date with me, but Lynn will be part of that planning committee, Lynn and Teresa, and I'm sure they'll be sharing the date and the details. So it'll be a one-day event in Houston in January. And it's everyone's welcome to attend.
It's the 26th.
Okay, January 26th. It's always on a Friday.
Yep.
Okay. And they're wonderful. It's a full day of self-care, and nurses in the local area present self-care skills and exercises. And the keynote is always one of the board of directors of American Holistic Nurses. And Lynn and Teresa, I believe you're going to do one of the workshops that day, maybe the closing, the end note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oops.
So, yeah.
Well, I think this is, if there are no further announcements or questions, I think we're good. I'll just say here one more time that we do want to invite you to put your name and email in the chat for the CE. And I think that's going to be going out in a couple of days. I think it's still in process. So tonight's topic is insecure to empower, a holistic path of personal growth. And our objective for the CE is this: nurses will receive 3 holistic tools to help them cultivate personal safety and move from being insecure to being in power. Yeshe Chodron is a master of soul growth who lovingly leads women through its many phases. She has embraced a variety of professional and spiritual roles, from nursing to the shamanic arts, and has been a guide of personal transformation since 1994. Sharon Burch has a Master's of Science in Nursing, is an advanced practice registered nurse, has an advanced practice holistic nurse board certified, and health and wellness nurse coach board certified. She studied business and has lived in the experience of a nurse entrepreneur since 1984. She has experience in holistic nursing practice, holistic nursing education, business administration, and business development. Wow. Well, Sharon and Yeshe, we're so happy to welcome you to our Austin area chapter tonight. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Lynn. And Yeshe's name is pronounced Yeshe Chodron, just so everyone will have that. Yeshe.
Thank you, Sharon. What a delight to be here. Thank you for having us as your guest. I wanted to share really briefly 4 C's that I like to share, or that I like to start with when I'm offering workshops or classes. And the 4 C's are sort of like a promise to ourselves and to each other, because while we're in this online space, we're still all together here. We're gathered together here in this same time and space. So the first thing is to be current. If we could be current with our shares, it's going to be a couple of opportunities that we ask you to share about your personal experience. And if we could be current with those as much as possible, that would be wonderful. If we could be conscious of how we're feeling, of ourselves, conscious of your nervous system in this moment, conscious of the fact that we are in a shared space, that will be wonderful. If we could be confidential, and I know that as nurses, we all know about the importance of confidentiality, so we'll agree to that confidentiality here, in that if there's something that you learned in this time that we have together, I'd love for you to take that outside of this experience and to do it without sharing names of anyone else that you might see on this in this gathering for tonight. And then I'd like to remind us all that we all can practice our own consent. And so that just means that if we're asking for a volunteer to share, please don't feel like you're required to share. You're allowed to give yourself permission to either say no or to say yes, however it best suits you. So just a show of hands, can we all just raise our hand and agree to those 4 C's? And you could do the little emojis if you want to, or you could just raise your hand on your screen. That would be awesome. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Beautiful. Great. So I wanted to share with you also, as we get started, that Sharon and I have created an agreement for my safety that she's going to be helping me with timekeeping. And this is a way that helps me stay in power. I tend to be long-winded, and Sharon is really good with helping me remember about, the time container. So she may be interrupting me as we go. Please expect that if I start to go on a little bit about something, and it's not because she's being rude, it's because she's actually being loving and being very supportive in this webinar. So I wanted to make sure to share that with you all. Great. So with that, I want to invite us all to just have a deep breath together. So maybe kind of like wiggle down into your seat a little bit and elongate your spine nice and tall. Allow your shoulders to drop down. It's great if you want to take notes. However, just for a moment, I want to ask that you put your notepads aside. And together, I'm going to ask us to breathe in through our nose and out through our nose for just one big, deep breath. Okay, so let's have a deep breath in and exhale. Yeah, really good. Excellent. So just allow yourself to become even more present as you continue to arrive and get settled. So we know that there are lots of nurses, and probably many of those of you who are on the call right now who are, experiencing a lot of stress and challenges in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And honestly, there's a lot happening in the world right now that is heavy, or that's big, or that we don't know what to do about. And that actually plays into how we serve in our role as nurses or other persons who are offering service. So I wanted to just acknowledge that, because it is such a big thing. And I want to encourage each of us to give ourselves permission to acknowledge that those things are affecting us and how we do our work, that those things are affecting our ability to feel secure, to feel in power while we're working. I want to encourage us to just acknowledge that that's part of the things that are stressing us right now. Okay. So, and Sharon, I think you've got your screen share on and we're seeing your notes. Just wanted to mention that briefly. Okay. So I'm wondering if we could take a minute to do, or a few minutes to do a brief exercise together. Okay. Because as you can see on the slide right now, we do want to serve our best and we want to serve our purpose, and we want to do that without endangering our own health and safety. And like I said a minute ago, a lot of us are feeling a lot of stress and feeling insecure in our work environments. So let's take a few minutes to do a little bit of an exercise, and it's a guided imagery exercise. So I'll lead you through it. And I invite you to either relax your eyelids or close your eyes. Okay. And have another deep breath, just like the first one that we did together. Breathe in through your nose, very deeply and fully. And exhale completely. Really good. And allow yourself to soften just a little bit. And I invite you to bring up a moment when you did not choose yourself. A moment where you did not choose yourself. And that could be anything from taking care of a patient before going and emptying your bladder. It could be taking care of, a patient before having a few deep breaths for yourself when you're having a hard time. It could be someone asked you to do something above and beyond, and you said yes without thinking about how much your feet were hurting or how tired you were, or maybe even how foggy your brain might be in that moment. But it could be anything at all. Those are just some examples, but bring up that moment where you were not choosing yourself. And I want to invite you to see it really clearly. Maybe even imagine that you can remember what you were wearing in that moment. Maybe you can imagine that you can see who was with you in that moment. Imagine that you can feel what it felt like to not choose yourself. And sometimes that requires that you slow down the event, because sometimes the moment that we're not choosing ourselves happens so fast, right? So imagine you can slow down that event, and in your mind, that moment that you didn't choose yourself. Feel what that feels like. And now I want to invite you to do something here in that vision. Imagine that in that vision, you can choose yourself. And maybe that just means you say to someone who's asking you for something, yes, I can do that, and it will be in this amount of time, but not right now. Because I need to have 3 deep breaths. Because I need to go use the restroom. Because I need to do something for me. Imagine you can completely change that scene just by choosing yourself for one small instance. Now feel what that feels like. Imagine that scene continues on in a positive way. Feel what that feels like. You notice shifting in your body as you're now choosing yourself. Really good. You've chosen yourself. Really good. So have another deep breath in. And again, exhale. I want to encourage you to continue allowing what it feels like to choose yourself to inform you as we go through the rest of our time together. Allow those feelings to be present. Okay, very gently, slowly, taking your time with yourself, allow your eyes to open and be present with us once again in this physical time and space. Well, semi-physical, in this virtual time and space. And just have a brief moment to write down the shift that you noticed. And if it's just one word or one sentence, we'll just give you about 10 or 20 seconds for that. Just write down the shift that you noticed. And you went from not choosing yourself to choosing yourself. Mm. You want to invite a volunteer to share with us just for a brief moment what you noticed in that shift, what that felt like for you. Either what you noticed that surprised you or what you noticed that's important. And if you want to raise your hand, Sharon will see who's got their hands raised, and we'll start with one person. Maybe we'll do two people if you would just like to briefly share.
And I don't have the controls for unmuting people
Oh.
tonight. So that will be one of our hosts. Yeah.
Pardon me for that.
Yeah, you should be able to unmute yourselves.
Okay, that'll work. Yeah, would one or two people like to share what shifted for you in that exercise? And just go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah. Is that Leslie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie.
Hello. I'll be happy to share.
Thank you.
What I noticed in the beginning was just this irritability and tightness. And then when I chose myself, then of course I could feel the breath come in and more sense of peace.
That's beautiful. Really beautiful. Thank you for that. Would someone else like to share? Nice to see some familiar faces. Okay. It looks like there's something in the chat. Would you be willing to read that for us, Sharon?
Yeah. Yeah. Cindy says, I went from feeling angry or resentful to feeling more relaxed and present.
Wow. That's really powerful. Beautiful. I love that.
Both Cindy and Leslie's changes seem really important and amazing that they could shift so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't try to shift, right? They created a space and invited a new experience. It looks like
Exactly.
Christine had her hand up. Christine, would you like to share?
I felt the same when choosing someone else, but in focusing on choosing choosing myself, I felt the energy kind of it was very centered in my face. And I guess it was symbolic of me choosing me. And so I just felt a physical change.
Ooh, Yeah. That's really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. I love the different ways that these changes occurred, just in the few people that we heard. And thank all of three of you for being brave enough to share. Much appreciated. What strikes me is how important it is to, imagine what would your job be like, or how does the rest of your day go when you have created that shift in choosing yourself, right? Yeah. They know too that one of the things that I like to talk a lot about is when we know what our truth is, then we get to choose that. And knowing our truth sometimes just requires a deep breath, right? And saying, I need to do this. And then we can move on with the rest of our day and give even better care. So imagine if you were centered within yourself, like we just heard, if you were focused, if you were having peace, and if you were present. Imagine if you could go to each of your tasks or your patients with that state of mind. Mm. And look at how quickly it happened. Didn't take very long at all, right? So good. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for changing the slide. So the other thing I wanted to share about knowing our truth is when we know our truth, we can then honor our boundaries. And that is true both personally and professionally. And honoring our boundaries, in my heart, that includes setting our boundaries. It includes upholding our boundaries. It includes changing our boundaries as required to maintain our personal safety. Okay, so just take that in for a moment. What I feel also is important about honoring our boundaries, which again includes setting, upholding, and altering them as required to keep us safe, is that when we acknowledge our boundaries and our own authentic responses, then conflict can really easily be resolved. So there's internal conflict, sort of like in our example of the exercise of, oh, I need to do this thing, and I have to, or I need to do this thing, and I have a need myself, and I don't know which one to choose. That's a conflict, right? But when we know our truth and when we're honoring our boundaries, that example that you just experienced can happen much more frequently, much more easily, and and it can resolve that internal conflict. What's really cool is boundaries can also resolve external conflict. So if you can think of a time in your workplace or even in your personal life where you've recently had a conflict, maybe it wasn't even anything major, but maybe it was that sort of tug of war that had you uncertain about whether you should choose yourself or choose someone else or something else, right? And then imagine when we hold our boundaries, such as saying, you know what, I need a moment before I go and do this thing for you. I'm happy to do it, and I need a moment first, or I'm not going to do that thing for you. I don't feel safe. I don't feel that isn't my, role, or whatever the case may be. But holding that boundary can help us create an experience of wholeness. So that part of us that wants to be responsible and do the thing and has a strong sense of duty, and this person is asking me for something and I want to appreciate, I want to say yes to that. And that part of us that says I have a need, and it's a very strong need, and it needs to be taken care of, that both of those voices can actually start to hear each other come into agreement when we have a boundary. I'm just going to pause and ask Sharon, do you have anything that you'd like to share around boundaries, our authentic truth, and how those things can dissolve conflict?
Yes, I do actually. And it's something I find that I learn and then I forget, and then I need to learn it again. So that this is a practice more than a destination for me personally. I had a situation come up just last night. I haven't even shared this with you, Yeshe. But someone who's very close to me and who's very ill right now and depends on me a lot was, in my view, I was task focused. I thought she needed all these tasks and my presence for that. And I was tired and I wasn't in my personal truth, that I was overextending. And we got into conflict. And what it was really around me not honoring my truth and my boundaries. And she actually needed that from me as well. She didn't care about the tasks as much as she cared about my presence, just being there in a soft place, really seeing her, really, like she said, she really, more than it, when we got to the bottom of it, and it didn't happen instantly because there were layers to unwrap. But when the bottom of it was, she wanted me to come into her space refreshed and calm because she was so depleted. And when I came in depleted too, then it just was harder for her and more stressful. And I think how many times we don't know that, especially as nurses, we are trying to do so much and we care and are expressing our care through the doing. And sometimes the being is what's most important. That's a little personal example from my life last night, actually.
Wow. Thank you. That is extremely current. Thank you for that. Wow. What strikes me as really important about that is that sense of presence being the important thing. That's one thing. And the other thing is the first thing that you said, which is it's a practice. Both of those super powerful. I agree. A lot of times we forget to just bring our presence with people, with one another, with ourselves, and when we do, it can truly resolve so much. It can create that sense of peace that it sounds like you wound up creating at the end. Really beautiful. Thank you. Briefly before we go into some tools, is there anything in the chat that needs our attention? Any pertinent questions or any shares that someone's entered into the chat?
Yeah, Kim just related that in the chat that she can relate to the situation I described. And that it gave her some food for thought.
Nice. Really beautiful. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm glad that this is resonating with you all. Really powerful. Okay. So I'm going to share a story, and this relates to the tools. And in case you haven't seen it yet, there is a handout, and Sharon has put it into the chat earlier, the link for the handout. And there it is again. And what we're sharing here relates to the handout, and you can follow along or you can leave the handout for later. It's your choice, whatever feels most supportive for you, because remember, you have consent and you get to practice that every single moment that we're together. So this is a story that I'm just going to call Why Am I Safe? And this is about presencing in the moment. And so Kenya, a woman named Kenya, and I were in session, and we were discussing an incident that had recently occurred while she was driving. It was nighttime, and on a local highway, she didn't see a tire that was in the road until she actually hit it. Her car sustained significant damage, but she was physically fine. And as we were talking, she was holding her notebook and pen very tightly, and her shoulders were scrunched. Her legs were twisted up as close to her body as possible. Maybe you can even remember a time where you've felt this way or where you've noticed your body doing this. And we did this brief exercise that I'm about to share with you in a couple of different ways. And it took about 3 minutes. And then she immediately untwisted her legs, her shoulders released, and she even shifted her notebook to the table that was next to her. So I'm sharing that story because I wanted to illustrate how, a lot of times we think that shifting from insecure to being in power takes all these different, complex things that we need to do. And certainly there are plenty of practices, tools, and processes that we can use. And some of them can be really simple. Right? So there's one that the one that I find almost the most rewarding because it happens so quickly. And you can combine this with having a deep breath. It's simply to do 2 things. And the first thing is to look behind you on one side. And I want to encourage you all to do this with me right now. So go ahead and just look behind you on one side. Okay. Really good. And then the other thing is to look behind you on the other side. So go ahead and look behind you on the other side. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, really good. It's if you yawned or had a deep breath in there, that's a perfect sign that this is doing its job on your nervous system. And what it does is it calms down the reptilian brain, because when we look behind us, when our ancestors looked behind them, they may have seen a saber-toothed tiger or, a wild bear or a wild boar or something frightening. But when we look behind us and see that there's no threat, yeah, exactly. Yeah, feel free to do it again. When we look behind us and see that there's no threat, immediately our nervous system takes it takes itself down a couple of notches. So just notice how you feel after you did that. Okay. I'll just give us a couple of seconds here to have a deep breath at your own pace. Yeah. Right. Really cool how that works, right? One of the cool ways that we can trust our bodies. So that's one of them. That's one of the tools that I wanted to share with you. Another tool that I'd like to share that I'm just calling Name the Things. And this is the second thing on your handout under this tool. Name the Things just means to take a moment, and this can, again, take just a few seconds. Look around and name the things that you see. You can name them out loud in a whisper, or you can name them in your mind, but to name the things that you see. So for me, it would be, I see a plant on my desk. I see some candles. I see my printer. I see a piece of art. I see a lamp. So as you're naming your things, again, I want you to notice what's happening in your nervous system. Right? Yeah. Typically, when we're caught up in a place of feeling insecure, it's either because of conflict, like we talked about a few minutes ago, or it's because we're in another place in our mind. So another place could be a past trauma. Another place could be a future expectation, but it's usually not right here, right now. And so taking a look around and naming what's in front of you brings your nervous system, brings your mind, and brings your emotions into this time and place. Okay. And typically that allows our nervous system to downregulate. And so one more way I want to experiment with this, I want to show this to you, is to name the colors. So this one I thought was really good because when we're even more elevated into that place of anxiety, or when we're even more checked out into that place of numbness, which can really happen in a big way when we're feeling insecure, naming the different types of one color can be a really good way to engage our executive functioning. So again, we're pulling the attention away from the reptilian brain and bringing it to the prefrontal cortex where that executive functioning is happening. So for me, let's say I see a lot of brown around me. And so I'm going to say, well, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different shades of brown just right here around my desk area. And so I want to encourage you to try that. Just take a look around and choose a color and see how many different shades of that color you notice. What I think is so great is you all look so calm right now. This is wonderful. So imagine how this is going to work for you when you're at work. And look at how quickly it happened. It takes about 5 seconds, right? Maybe 10 seconds to name different shades of one color. And you can see how it brought your nervous system down and it brought your attention back to your executive functioning, right, in your brain. Okay,
Yeah, Shay, there's a comment
yeah.
from Paige Stone Rock. I don't know if she wants to say it. Well, she may want to say something about it, but she's asking if this technique is part of something called Hendricks loop of awareness. Have you heard of that?
I have not heard of that. I don't know. I will say though that, and thank you for that question. That's a great question. I will say that a lot of psychotherapists and a lot of people who teach, who support people working through trauma use techniques like this. And these are techniques that I've learned years ago and that I've been using with my clients and myself since then. So it's very possible. I'm just not sure. Good question. Okay, so I want to move to the next tool because, or not because, I want to move to the next tool. And I really love this one. This one I feel like is, it encourages a little bit more of the executive functioning process, which again can help us come back into the present moment. So, and it also relies on our deep sense of inner knowing, which intuition, I feel like, is a really important part of knowing our truth and being clear about our boundaries, right? So who can I enlist for support right now? Using discernment. So using our discernment can really transform the whole situation that we're in. For example, many years ago, a spiritual mentor of mine told a group of us this story. She was already a mature woman at the time with all white hair, and she's very petite in size. And so she had the physical profile of a person that we often think of as an easy target for attack, right? She was walking in a city that she didn't know and somehow wound up in what she considered to be a very scary neighborhood. She did not feel safe. So she was feeling uneasy with the people around her. And 2 people started walking toward her. She perceived them to have very suspicious behavior, and they were walking toward her kind of assertively, maybe even a little aggressively. And one of them kind of walked ahead of her and came up behind her as the other one was walking right up to her in that aggressive manner. So as soon as they got close, she said, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. I'm not sure how I wound up here. I know I'm not supposed to be here. I'm so glad that you found me before I got myself into danger. Can you just point me in the right direction? I'm so glad it's you." And it was amazing. I always found this story to be amazing. They were so taken aback by her flipping the switch on them that they immediately switched their intention, at least that's what it looked like, and instantly became her protectors. So instead of the dangerous behaviors that they were exhibiting, they started to protect her. They were like, "Oh man, you got to get out of here. This is not safe for you," We need to get you to where you need to go. Where is it that you're trying to go? And it was amazing. Their roles completely switched. And so for her, that was the right thing to do in that moment. And she knew it was the right thing to do because she used her intuition. Now, I use my discernment every day in making decisions large and small, and I teach my private clients how to use theirs as well. And I know that as nurses, we know how to do that too. And we rarely do it for ourselves. We're usually using our intuition and our discernment to make decisions for others and their care and, you know, the tasks that we need to take. But it's important that we utilize those inner resources for ourselves as well, because just like my mentor, her name is Oshana, just like my mentor used her intuition to flip that switch on those two people, and she got herself out of that scary situation. We can do the same thing, whether it's as extreme as that, or whether it's something just sort of mild and simple, right? So I'm curious about where in your nursing career or where in your professional life in general, could you, or where do you see yourself using this type of discernment for your personal safety? And let me check in with Sharon. Do we have a minute or two to receive a share around that?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, great. Excuse me. So would anyone like to share either, can you relate to that story in some way? Or can you see yourself using your intuition and discernment in a way that will help you move into your personal safety by choosing yourself? And I think you can go ahead and unmute yourself again. Anyone would like to do that? I'll give it a moment. I'm seeing a lot of thoughtful faces.
I can share something.
Yes, please.
So your story reminds me of something that one of my teachers, he taught me, and he was talking about mindset and how, you know, maybe you're in your home and you're just kind of like, oh, you know, or upset or whatever like that. And then you hear this knock, knock, knock on the door. You peek out and you go kind of spiffy yourself up, and all of a sudden you're like, everything has changed. And you answer the door in a totally different space.
Yeah.
And how that at each moment we have that opportunity to do that, if we so choose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's part of that flipping.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We do have that opportunity at each moment. And I love that. And it's really true. I've done it myself, you know, hearing the door knock and, oh, I want to be in a different energy. And that's really about choice, isn't it? And making that choice means that we're aware of our personal truth. It means that we know what boundary we'd like to set. And it means that we've discerned how we can keep ourselves safe or presentable, as the case may be. Right? So yeah, really good. Thanks, Lori. I appreciate that share. It's really good. Sharon, do you have anything that you'd like to speak into on this one? Using our discernment.
Yeah, I actually do. Yeshe. During COVID, I just became kind of a hermit. I'm pretty introverted anyway, and I took the full advantage of COVID to stay home and, you know, just hermit and renew myself in that way. And now that that excuse is not so, you know, I need to move out of that cocoon kind of. I find that I need to challenge myself to ask for support sometimes. And actually that kind of goes with my very independent spirit too. I love to do things by myself and feel all the competence, you know, of not needing support. But I've recently realized, gosh, people have a good feeling when they get to support someone. And there are times right now that I need it. I'm moving and I have a lot going on and so on. And so I've started practicing just asking people if they know of a resource or if they have time, to help me do something. And it's been actually quite amazing how easy it was in comparison to my imagination that I would feel awkward or they wouldn't want to help or, these different stories I had. And so I'm starting to see that asking for support is actually a social skill that I can improve by practice, another
Yeah.
practice thing. And that, I don't have to always be the helper either. I am more comfortable in that role than the one that asks for support.
Mhm.
And it's actually a beautiful thing to receive the support. So that's that's my share around support.
I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely true. People most of us want to help each other, right? And a lot of times, again, because of what we're going through, we may not even be thinking outside of ourselves to realize that someone else could use support, a type of support that could be easy for us to share. And if that's true of others, what if that's true for us too? What if we get to receive that support that someone else could easily share, right? And I know that in the nursing profession, we're really used to giving and giving, right? And allowing ourselves to receive could be tremendously healing. Knowing who is safe for what support we require, again, relies on our discernment. And when we're able to sense that part of us that is intuitive, that deep sense of inner knowing, it's easy for us to say to ourselves, well, I have this thing going on and I really need to share with someone about it because it's tremendously overwhelming. And, maybe we're not going to share.
Were you gonna give me a kiss?
Asking for help.
She's asking for support.
That's so good. Maybe we're not necessarily going to share
Were you
our
gonna give me a kiss?
story of overwhelm with, the person that's selling us a pack of gum or selling us our gas. Or maybe we're not going to share about a deep grief that we're experiencing, with our boss, right? But maybe when we're using our discernment and our intuition and we know our personal truth and we have our boundaries intact, our boundaries can help, combine with our discernment and move us into that space of, I think talking to my coach is probably the best person to talk about when I'm having trouble with this business piece. Or I think talking to a supervisor is the best person to talk about if I'm having difficulty, managing either my caseload or a particular patient or something like that. But when we kind of lose that sense of discernment, we start sort of losing ourselves a little bit. And we start saying things or doing things in a space that may not be supportive of what we're saying and doing, right? And, for example, I don't know about any of you, but I've been in a situation where when I worked in long-term care, there were nurses that were sharing very elaborate personal stories with the residents or the patients. And I was very shocked about that, but what I understand is that it's because they're not clear about their personal truth. They're not clear about their boundaries. They don't have the discernment intact. And so they're not sure who to share with. And that can create a lack of safety and a general sense of insecurity because those patients, and maybe even the rest of the staff, such as myself, who was watching, no longer took them seriously. And when people are not taking them seriously, then that can put a patient at risk. you know, when they need to be taken seriously, when that person needs to be taken seriously. So discernment can really help us with knowing who is safe for what support we require. Does that make sense? Anybody have a question about that? Great. Okay, I think let's go ahead and move to the last tool that I'd like to share, which is an anchoring. And so I thought I'd have 3 stories to share, and I do and I don't. So the third story is actually your story. So as we've been talking tonight, I'm sure that you've noticed, or maybe you can notice now, how your nervous system has shifted. Maybe you can notice how you thought of ways that you can utilize these processes or practices or tools that I've been sharing in your work life, or maybe even in your home life, or both. And so as we have conversations like this, there's a healing that takes place, you know, and in my heart, healing means a movement toward wholeness away from active wounding, right? Movement toward wholeness away from active wounding. And so my guess is that you're having at least some sort of experience of a movement toward wholeness. And so you're the story tonight. And so I want to encourage you in this moment to just take a moment and reflect on how things have been shifting for you through this conversation, in your nervous system, in your emotional body, in your willingness to choose yourself. Just take note of that, have a deep breath into that. And just notice anything that feels particularly healing about the things that we've been talking about tonight. For you, anything that feels healing for you. And then I want to encourage you to consider if this healing experience or this healing moment were a movie, what would you title this movie? This healing experience, just in our time together, or a movie, what would you title that movie? And feel free to put it in the chat or write it on a piece of paper or both. Give it another few seconds as things start to come in. And if there's some responses in the chat, I think I saw something flash across my screen. If you wouldn't mind to share what's in the chat, Sharon?
Sure. We have a couple titles here.
Okay.
Time for Me is love that. Spacious Freedom. Not beautiful.
Yes.
Finally Exhaling. Yeah. Healing Toward Empowerment.
Yes.
These are so beautiful. Light at the End of the Tunnel.
Oh, yes. I like it.
Breath of Quiet. These, I know,
Yeah.
they're poetic.
Yes, you ladies are giving me chills.
Yeah. Self-care is the right care.
Oh, yes, it really is.
Return to self. Letting go.
Hey, beautiful. These are really beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for putting your movie title in there. And so I want to bring us back to ourselves. So if you, whether you put it in the chat or not, consider your movie title, which is the title of this healing experience for you. And have a deep breath into that. You can relax or close your eyes for a moment. Have a deep breath into this experience. And notice, where in your body do you feel this healing experience the most? Where in your body do you feel it the most? Just allow your attention to go there. And I invite you to place a hand there, that spot on your body. And breathe into that spot. And again, you're just breathing into this healing experience and where you can feel that the most in your body. And next, I'm going to invite you to tap that spot. Gently tap that spot on your body where you feel this healing experience the most. And then, if you like, you could say the title of your healing experience, which was your quote unquote movie title. Say that 3 times to anchor that feeling into your body. As you're tapping, say your title 3 times. So I think I heard one that said movement into empowerment, or moving into empowerment. So for example, I would just say that 3 times, moving into empowerment, moving into empowerment. I want you to say yours and invite you to say yours. Okay, and once you've done that, you can just let your hand rest on your body again in that spot. Have another deep breath in. Okay. When you're ready, you can release your hand. You can open your eyes. Very good. One thing that comes to mind to share in this moment is recently I've been having experiences of deepening my own sense of empowerment, and it's happening in the quietest of moments. And for some reason, that's been surprising to me, right? It's been happening when I'm just in stillness or I'm just in quiet, but I can feel that power and I'm able to take it with me outside of that quiet moment and into my life experiences, into my daily life. So I invite you to take this beautiful healing that we've experienced in what I will say is sort of a quiet moment, right? We're gathered here online, and allow that to move with you through that anchor that you've just created in your body, through the wisdom that you've gained in our time together, through the tools that you can practice for yourself, and through any part of this experience that you remember or that has landed in you. And do we have a moment for anyone to share? Or if they want to put in the chat, if there's anything in the chat to read, do we have a moment for that, or are we pretty much at time?
We have 1 minute left.
We have 1 minute left. Okay.
So maybe people can share in the chat, and then I
Yeah,
think you have something you want to share with everyone too.
certainly. Thank you for that. So please go ahead and share in the chat. And while I'm sharing this, I wanted to offer that I have a session called the Empower Hour. And this is a complimentary personal consultation that you can have with me. And the purpose of this consultation is 30 to 45 minutes, is to give you expert guidance on your #1 personal empowerment challenge, your personal power challenge, okay? And as a bonus, you'll see yourself and your personal power more clearly. Many people who have experienced the Empower Hour have discovered things about themselves and the difficulties that they're going through that they didn't even know before they got on the call. And I've always found that to be really inspiring. And it's likely that you'll have a similar experience should you decide to have that Empower Hour session with me. So in the session, we'll assess your situation together, and you'll experience being seen, heard, valued as a whole person on a soul-led journey into your personal evolution. And at the end, you'll be very respectfully invited into a supportive program or service that is most appropriate for your next step. And I believe that Sharon's going to put the link in the chat there if she hasn't already. And you can go ahead and use that link to schedule your complimentary session with me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you one-on-one. And I hope that you've enjoyed this time together. This has been a joy for me. It's been really great. And I hope that you'll take a lot of inspiration and wisdom from here. And you have your handout as well that you can refer back to. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for spending this time together. Oh, I see some thanks. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's truly, truly, truly my pleasure.
Yeah, you're getting lots of thank yous.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah. I wonder yeah, if Lynn and Teresa want to wrap it up. Of course, if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat. Yeshe will get them, and you could leave your email too if you wanted her to get back to you. So, but maybe I should just turn this over to Lynn. And
Yeah, I think you can stop sharing, Sharon, if you would, please. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. As we said earlier, anyone who is seeking a CE is welcome to put your name and email in the chat. And I just want to give a special thank you to Sharon and especially to Yeshe for providing our program this evening. It's been a delight to get to meet you and to get to know you better. And I really appreciate the wonderful turnout that we've had tonight with our Austin area chapter of the Holistic Nurses. Any last words, Teresa? You're on mute.
No, I'm very relaxed. I'm ready for bed. I will sleep well tonight. So thank you very much. That was really nice. Really great.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And we'll be back next month on the third Tuesday. Thanks so much.
thanks for
Thank you so
having
much.
us, Lynn. We really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
really good. Thank you.